Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Tacoma Cyclist. I am the Tacoma Cyclist, and with me as always is my trusty sidekick, the Boogeyman. We've been out for a little while. My apologies, it's been quite some time since we released a video. I happen to have a forced vacation thanks to a Dodge and me disagreeing on what space of the road that we should share. They were wrong, and unfortunately I was the one that wound up in the hospital. But I'm back, I'm riding again, and it's going okay. So, one of the side benefits of getting hit by a car, if there ever was such a thing as a side benefit of getting hit by a car, is you get to try out a new bike, especially when it's not your fault. And today we're going to be looking at the Bianchi Oltre XR4 behind me here. Now, before all of you Italian bike fanboys get your panties in a wad, yes, this is an Italian bike. It is not full Celeste, it's black and Celeste. I actually like this colorway better. Yeah, SRAM red E-tap on an Italian bike. I know it's not Campy. Campagnola wheels, I know, get ready, it gets worse. Shimano brakes, a little bit of everything. These are the direct mount Shimano brakes, and when I put this bike together, SRAM hadn't yet announced or even started building their direct mount brakes yet. So it's Shimano brakes, SRAM red E-tap with Quark power meter, and yes, Campagnola wheels that came from the factory with their Shimano free hub on it. So that's actually the way it is from Campagnola itself. This has not been modified. So it's a little mixture of everything, and yes, I know a lot of people are going to freak out, but the reality is it's my bike, and I like SRAM red E-tap. I love SRAM red E-tap, and I love Bianchi, so I'm going to put those two together. Sure, I could have gone Campagnola, but I didn't want to. So this is what it is. Okay, so one of the things about this bike is I did not spec this bike out to be a lightweight bike. I spec'd it out to be an aerodynamic bike. It just so happens that it turned out to be a pretty lightweight bike also. And that's just because the frame itself is relatively light. If you look online, the specs on this put this frame anywhere in the 850-ish range for the frame, and about another 300 to 350 for the fork. That's not super light, but it's certainly not heavy either. So this comes in around 1200 total for frame, fork, and then you add a couple more hundred for the seat post. As you can see here, the weight on this bike as it's built, and this was built up from the frame set. I built this separately, so the only thing that came in the box with this bike were the frame, the fork, and the seat post. The seat post is their own custom brand. Everything else was added, and was added for the purpose of being stiff and for the purpose of being aerodynamic. So it's a Zip Sprint SL stem, it's the Zip Aero bars, and then of course the standard SRAM E-tap group set. And in this case, again, 50mm deep section bore Ultra wheels. Not exactly light, they're not super heavy either, don't get me wrong, but they're not really light. And then that saddle up there is a fabric scoop saddle. This particular one's the flat, and it does use the carbon rails. If I wanted to build this bike out to be light, I could have easily saved another 300 or 400 grams by going with a lighter saddle, lighter bars, and a lighter stem for sure. Shave off another 300 grams just for going with another set of wheels. When I get this thing in its lightest race configuration, that's using my lighter wheels, that's really the only thing I do to change it, I get it under 16 pounds, no problem. In this configuration, which is really full aero configuration, you can see the weight here is just a little over 16 pounds. I would not call that a heavy bike. I would climb on that bike all day long and I wouldn't even complain about it. And frankly, it's only a little bit heavier than my S-Works Tarmac. So let's talk a little bit about ride characteristic of this bike. Again, this is a stiff bike. It was made to be a stiff bike, and it's made to be an aero bike. Most people that have ridden an aero bike will tell you they're stiff and they're not meant for long journeys. They're gonna beat you up. And they'll also tell you that they're heavy. A lot of the aero bikes out there on the market nowadays are heavy. And as we've seen, this is not that heavy. So how about stiffness? We can see here that the down tube is huge. The seat stays are big and chunky. The chain stays, big and chunky. Top tube, it's got a little bit of thinness to it. It tapers towards the seat, but it's still, this is a thick bike. One of the things that Bianchi touts as being extra special about this bike, though, is their countervail technology. If you read the marketing stuff on this, it's some magical space-age material that they weave in with the carbon fiber and with the resin that dampens vibrations. The question is, and this is the question I've seen on internet forums, it's the question I've seen on YouTube videos, is does it actually work? And frankly, I haven't seen a lot of reviews talking about whether or not it works or not. Now, I don't have a bike that is exactly this shape and exactly this build without the countervail, so I can't tell you how it compares without it. What I can do is I can compare the ride quality of this to the S-Works Tarmac. And I think that's valuable because a lot of people have tarmacs, a lot of people have ridden tarmacs, a lot of people know what the tarmac feels like. In my previous review, which I've posted down below as a link, I'll tell you that the person that sold me the Tarmac, who's also the same bike shop that sold me this bike as well, the people that sold me the Tarmac told me right away that the Tarmac will make you want to ride like an asshole all the time. And what they meant by that is you're going to be the guy in groups or gal in groups that always wants to go off the front, always wants to hammer, always wants to push the pace a little bit because the bike is always fast, it's always on. Or as Hulk says, he's always angry. That's the way that bike works. And that's great, except it can kind of feel a little bit numb because you're always feeling that same sensation. This is a little bit different. It's a lot different, actually. As far as stiffness is concerned, this is a stiffer bike. It's not even close. This is a way stiffer bike than the Tarmac. Not even in the same league. When you put the pedal down on this, you will feel absolutely no bottom bracket shift whatsoever. But, interestingly enough, you can ride this thing all day. I've ridden it several times, well over 60 miles, and I've gotten off the bike and felt perfectly comfortable. In fact, I felt better on that after 60, 70 miles than I did on my Tarmac after just 20 to 30 miles. The Tarmac is a stiff race bike, there's no doubt about it, but it does one thing, it races. This is actually incredibly smooth. It's very aerodynamic. Yes, of course, you can notice the aerodynamic difference when you're riding it. It's very easy to feel the aerodynamic difference on this, but it doesn't beat you up. Now, the other interesting thing about this bike is, like I mentioned, the Tarmac is kind of one-noted. It's on, it's angry all the time, right? The Bianchi is not. It's very tame, in fact. When you're riding it over chip seal, when you're riding it on a multi-use trail and you need to go slower, maybe not just completely balls out, it behaves pretty well. It's a very gentle bike. The moment you mash the pedals, the bike comes to life. It just springs to life. It just shoots forward out from underneath of you, almost ridiculously so. But I don't want you to think that means it's twitchy. You can descend on this. In fact, we just did some really cool descents out in the mountains west of us here, where we were just carving corners left and right. And of course, Boogeyman was pulling off in front of everybody and bombing the descents like nobody's business. But this thing was keeping up just fine. It was not twitchy. It didn't feel like I was losing the front end. It just felt planted. It felt safe. It felt secure. And frankly, it just carved right through any turn I wanted to put it through. The dual pivot mount brakes here, the dual mount brakes are phenomenally good at stopping. I'll talk about wheels later. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do a review on these wheels as well as another set of wheels that I've got in shop here. But the braking on these, the braking with these particular pads and with these particular calipers is phenomenal. I don't care how wet it is, these brakes stop these wheels and it doesn't feel any different than an aluminum set. So really positive things there. But again, this bike is just, it's responsive, it's fast, it's smooth. It's everything I'd ever want in a bike. When I came back to the bike shop, this is not a bike that my bike shop normally carries. I worked with them to get in touch with Bianchi because it's something that's been a bucket list bike of mine. I've wanted a nice Bianchi. The Boogeyman's first bike was a Bianchi, and it was an amazing bike. My track bike is a Bianchi. I am a huge fan of Bianchi. I think that the legacy is amazing. I'm from northern Italy, not too far from where the Bianchi factory is. I love everything about Bianchi. So I wanted to get this bike, and my bike shop ordered it for me, worked with Bianchi to get a hold of it, and first thing I did after I went on a few long rides with this bike is I went back to the bike shop and I said, this is a better bike than the Tarmac, no questions. No questions asked, it's a far superior bike to the Tarmac. It's in the same price range overall as the S-Works Tarmac, so it is not a cheap bike. Spec'd out the way you're seeing it here, it's over $10,000. It is not a cheap bike, but it's an amazing bike. And frankly, if you're looking for a bike that is your bucket list bike, your white whale, the bike you've been dreaming for, even if it means you're not going to take it into races because you're afraid to wreck it. I'm not really keen on taking this into crits anytime soon. I've got a crit bike and I'll take it in. This may be going on some road races, it's going to go on some long touring rides. This is going to be a bike that I want to ride for the rest of my life. It's that amazing. So if you're looking for that bike, if you're looking for that experience in a bike, this is it. Is it overkill for a lot of people? Heck yes, but that's exactly what it's meant to be. So like I said, there aren't a lot of reviews for the XR4s out there. In fact, there's not a lot of reviews for many of the top-end Bianchi bikes. You'll see some in some magazines from time to time, but not a whole lot on these. And I think that's a shame. They're excellent bikes, and there are a lot of people out there that are spending this kind of money on other bikes. I see Pinarellos all the time. I see S-Works all the time. This is in the same price range as those bikes. And I'm telling you, this is a bike that is not just a competitor of those top-end bikes, but frankly, it's an all-in-one, does everything well. I've got 25s on here right now that are blown up easily to 27, and it still has room for more. So you could easily put a 28 on this wheel on this bike. It is every bit as competitive with those bikes, if not more so, because it is comfortable, it is stiff, it is responsive, it does all of those things, and it does them all perfectly well. So I really strongly believe that this, if you are looking for your bucket list bike, this is the one to consider. If you really don't want to spend the same kind of money on this, of course, Bianchi just released their Ultra XR3, which is very similar to the XR4, same exact shape, it's a different modulus carbon fiber. They've also released their new Aria line as well. Again, same exact shape. It's a much lower modulus carbon fiber, so it's a heavier bike. But even if you add 2 pounds to this bike, 3 pounds to this bike, it's still a lightweight aero bike. There's plenty of aero bikes out there that are pushing 19 pounds. This thing weighs in just over 16, and if I put the lightweight wheels on it, sure, it kills some of the aero properties, but it's well under 16 pounds. So consider this. Consider the Aria, consider the XR3. They're all amazing bikes, and whether it's marketing mumbo jumbo or not, the countervail technology that's in this bike really, to me, makes a huge difference, and it makes it much more smooth and enjoyable to ride over long distances. So one quick note about sizing on this bike. European sizing, American sizing, oftentimes a little bit different. In tarmacs, in treks, I typically run a 54 centimeter bike. I'm 5'9", I have a 32-inch inseam. Yes, I'm like all legs and no torso. The Boogeyman and I joke, he's very similar in size and proportion to me. The moment we pull our pants up, they're pretty much right up to our nipples anyway, so we always kind of look like the old man with the pants hiked up because we're just all leg and no torso. But a 54 centimeter bike, typically in American sizing, works out just fine for me. And a 52 for the Boogeyman because he's growing like crazy. Well, European bikes a lot of times will do 53 and 55 centimeters, not 54. And that's what this is. This is a 55. I was concerned about sizing up because I sometimes feel like a 54 is even a little bit long for me with my shorter torso. But I will tell you that the 55 in this is only millimeters away in reach and stack from the 54 in the tarmac. In fact, the reach on this is, I believe, a little bit more shallow. And what I've noticed is with a 100 millimeter stem on here, that when I get out of the saddle for climbing or for sprints, I can sometimes hit my knees here. Now, part of that's because these aero bars really do add an extra centimeter of depth towards the rear of the bike, and that might just be that I'm clipping right there. But also in doing my measurements from the tip of my saddle to the center of my bars, it's actually about a centimeter more shallow than on the S-Works tarmac when I have the saddle put the same distance behind the bottom bracket. So with this bike, if you're on the fence and you're not sure about sizing, maybe you normally ride a 54, maybe normally ride a 52, and you're not sure about going up or down a size, look at that stack and reach and compare it to your existing, because I'm willing to bet that if you went up to the next size, you'd probably be okay. So again, this is a 55, I normally ride a 54, and I have a little bit more room on here. I can probably put a 110 stem, maybe even a 120, especially considering these. So just take that into consideration, just check the stack and reach on those. Don't worry about a top tube length, because if you got a compact geometry bike versus a standard geometry, it's going to change all that. Stack and reach, and that'll give you your appropriate bike size. Okay, so thanks again for stopping by and checking out a review of the Bianchi Ultra XR4. I really have enjoyed reviewing this bike, well, because I get to own it. It's mine. I get to keep it, and frankly, I love it. So I can't say enough positive stuff about it. I can tell you that when he gets big enough, he doesn't get to have it. That's mine. He can have my tarmac. But this is frankly an amazing bike. If you're in the market, just spend the money and do it. Skip the other ones, go with this one. All right, thanks again for stopping by, and we'll see you again soon. Yeah.